Hello. This week's slightly different. I recorded a podcast with a friend of mine, John Kenny. He's the relationship guy. And originally we recorded the first podcast, or actually the second podcast with him in November, I think it was. And while we were talking, we spoke about healing and the healing work that I do. And he suggests, we came to the point where I'd come back a few weeks later and do an actual session recorded to go out on his podcast. The first one was recorded in November. I think that went out just before Christmas, the 22nd of December, and I shared it on the Mindfuckery podcast very beginning of January. The second one was recorded beginning of December, and that went out at the middle of March. So I'm going to share it with you today. I'm in a really noisy area, just getting ready to move on from where I'm staying. I've been staying this week. It's really noisy, and I thought it seems the ideal time to share this. I'll also link the two other podcasts. The one that I posted in January was called Divorce, the Narcissist and Healing from Emotional Abuse. And as I said, this is a healing session that I did with John. Wait to the end and see what he says. I talk about the wounding, but also you will hear the process that I go through. It isn't scary. John and I met in 2016. We were both on a Speakers Academy training course. It was a 4-day event, and we were asked during that time, as we were putting our talks together and creating and learning, we were asked to challenge something that's within our industry. And I picked counselling. It's something I've experienced, something I've been through a couple of times, and the reason I picked it was because of the healing that I do. At that point where I was in my journey, my marriage had just broken down months before. I think I was in a really good place at that point, that weekend, and I wasn't thinking about my ex at all until the Saturday. So I think this was day 3. I lost day 3 and day 4 with confidence, and my self-esteem crashed through the floor. I went into rumination, and it was an email that I got from my estranged husband asking me if I tried to hack into his Facebook account, which I hadn't. And I emailed back and said, no, we both know that I wouldn't do that. So anyway, the reason I challenge counselling, I think counselling's really helpful. I think it's like a child and a shape sorter, helps you put things in the correct place or formulate things. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't heal. It keeps you trapped in rumination. I found a really interesting piece from an American psychologist very recently, and she was talking about something very similar. When we're healing this, for us to move on and not repeat these patterns, we need to go in and remove the trauma, which is held in the body like a physical wound. Anyway, listen to the podcast. You've listened to John's reaction at the end, and I hope you enjoy this, something different this week.
Hello, I'm John Kenny, the relationship guy and relationship coach, helping people to create healthy, intimate relationships. Welcome to the show where we talk about all things relationships with a mix of my own relationship ramblings and some great guests from all walks of life who will be discussing the importance of relationships to them. Hello, so I'd like to welcome back my guest today, who is an author, speaker and woundologist. And today we're going to look at a clearing session. Welcome back, Elizabeth Goddard.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming back. Please, firstly, do briefly explain what a clearing session is.
Okay, so wounding to me is like a physical wound, but it's emotional. It sits in the body, as does a bruise, as in a similar way that you might break a bone, and we need to heal. So these emotional wounds can be words that we've heard. They actually can also be ancestral. So it's something that's come down the ancestral line. And if you believe in past life, where, that you've been here before, that you've lived in a past life, that they can also come through past life woundings. So they sit in the body, and they could be anywhere in the body. And they sit, and to me, I can only describe them as festering. They are they're just waiting to be discovered.
Right.
To me, a wound has got a voice.
Hmm.
It represents something, and it is a very powerful. So it it's like if you take paracetamol for a headache, or if you take painkillers when you're recovering from something,
Mm.
it gives you a false sense of security in the fact that you carry on doing things. I remember having young children and carrying them, and after one of my children, after having an operation, I've been told not to.
Yeah.
And and I did more damage when all the painkillers wear off. And
Right.
to me, this is what's going on with the emotional wounds. We don't know they're there until something happens, and we're triggered by something, and it's that reaction. But rather than walking away or covering it up, to me, it's let's look at this, let's find out what it is, and let's remove it like you would a splinter, or
Yeah.
a thorn or something like that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree and see where you're coming from. It's interesting because we've had a brief conversation. I've done quite a lot of work on myself, as you might have guessed, or people might know. But it's interesting that that wounding stuff is ever present, and
Mm.
even though I've done a lot of positive work on myself, there are still things that will trigger me, and I'll think things. I think, why am I thinking that? But there's clearly something still going on under the surface which I've not quite addressed. I gave
Yeah, like little earworms. They just, you think you've got it, and then
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I think I gave you the example before the show that early on this year, there was some producers for a show on ITV, a relationship show on ITV, and they reached out to me to say, we're looking for some relationship experts to come on the show. And I was super excited, thinking, man, this is going to really, ITV, right?
yeah,
Primetime ITV show. This is going to blow my career through the roof. It's going to be
yeah.
absolutely awesome. And then the guy said, well, there's a lot of relationship experts out there. He said, so I've got a few more people to speak to. And the first thing that came into my head was, that means they're not going to pick me.
Yeah.
I went into a massive deflated self-doubt space. And then I was like, why are you saying they're not going to pick you? Of course they're going to pick you. You know your stuff, and you're going to really good at this, and you know what to do. And I already had ideas running around my head from the conversation I had how this would work on their show. But the first thing my brain said, as soon as he said, I'm looking at other people, I've got other people to speak to, the first thing my brain said was, well, they're not going to pick you now.
Mm.
And I was completely flattened by it.
And then that's where we're going to start.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we start with that emotion. Can you remember? Could you go back to that moment? He's told you that,
Mm.
and I'm going to put an old-fashioned phone down rather than a press the button.
Yeah.
You put the phone down.
Yeah.
What's the emotion going through it? That's it. I'm not going to be picked.
Yeah. It was disappointment.
Yeah.
Massive disappointment in that I'm not going to get this now.
And if you looked at that, or if you go into your body and that disappointment, can you feel that disappointment in your body?
Yeah, it's kind of a gut feeling, like a sinking feeling in my stomach.
Okay.
And
Go on.
maybe like even a little bit of embarrassment. I think maybe a little
Okay.
kind of heat in my face and stuff.
Okay. And so it's in the gut.
Yeah.
And it's a sinking.
Mm.
And with that emotion, can you give it a name? Is it embarrassment, or is it disappointment, or is it something else?
The word rejection came into my head.
Okay.
But it doesn't. It kind of feels they're going to reject me. So maybe rejection, but it was more like, if to put it into more than one feeling, it's more of a thought, which is, well, I'm not good enough.
Okay.
It's that. So I think the feeling is probably disappointment initially, but maybe manifesting then as rejection.
Yeah.
But the thought process is, it's like I'm a fraud. They've found me out, or they're gonna find me out.
Yeah. Okay. And that's quite common. You've worked in this area for a long time. Those yeah, that's quite a common thing, isn't it? That fraud, or people thinking that you're not as good, or
Yeah, but I think I'm going to get found. I've been not. I've been found out because there wasn't really anything there that you could find me out. But it was almost as if, in fact, maybe it might be more like if they do pick me, they're going to find me out. But I
yeah.
think it was a secondary thought rather than the initial disappointment
Okay.
and the initial.
And that emotion, is that because you don't feel good enough, or what would you say that they're going to find me out means?
That I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing.
I mean,
They're going to put me on the spot, and I'm just going to crumble type thing.
okay. And what does that emotion feel like? What does that feel like?
Embarrassing. I think
Okay.
that's where the redness, that embarrassment, maybe.
Yeah.
That was a secondary thing. Like I said, I think that's the.
Yeah. But they're linked. So
Mm.
what we're going to do is, because there are two ways we could go, but we're going to go down the route that I started off with.
Okay.
Um, and this rejection of and not being good enough emotion that's in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
You tune into that again, that sinking with a slight bit of embarrassment. Can you feel that again? That's the phone's gone down, clonk.
I can picture myself in that space. I'm finding it hard to recreate the
Okay,
actual.
well, I mean, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Um, do you remember that feeling? Because what I'm going to ask is, have you felt that feeling before?
Uh, yes. Yeah. I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
I felt like that quite a lot during my athletics career.
Okay. And if we, how old, if you were to go back, so we're
Mm.
going to jump back on a timeline
Yeah.
to what age that felt like you were feeling that.
If I was to be able to age myself in that space, I would say I was teenager.
Yeah. What I'm going to say is, if we go back to this time, this disappointment, this sinking feeling, this
Mm.
embarrassment that
Mm.
was all bundled up in an emotion in your gut, can you remember an event where you felt that before?
Can't think of a specific.
Normally they just like bubbles, they just like
Mm.
pop up.
I
Oh,
can't.
there's a time that
I think of kind of a few different, but could have.
specific events, if they're brilliant ones, if you can go, yeah, I was at such and such a place and this was happening.
Trying to think of anything.
They usually pop into your head. Let's go
Yeah,
back then.
yeah, no, I can't think of anything off the top of
Yeah.
it. There's one thing I'm thinking of now, and this is a memory which is actually on video, which my dad used to carry a videotape around. And we are on holiday on the Isle of Wight,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm all jolly, and
Mm-hmm.
I get in front of the camera, and I'm being silly, and I'm doing this funny little walk, and I'm all laughy and everything. And my
Mm-hmm.
dad says, "Stop being so stupid and get out of the way."
Okay.
And you can see my little face just go, "Bosh."
Yeah. And
But
how old?
I was 11.
Okay. And that feeling, have you felt younger than 11?
Um, I'm not sure if this is the same feeling, but it is massively like kind of disappointment. And when I was probably about 8 or so,
Mm-hmm.
I saw in the mirror, I saw I had some freckles on my face. And I said to my mum, "Mum, look, I've got freckles." And she said, "You haven't got any freckles." She said, "If you can tell me you've got freckles and count them," she said, "I'll give you £1 for every freckle you can count."
Yeah.
So I went back to the mirror and I counted 8 little freckles. I went back, I got 8 freckles, and my mum said, "You haven't got any freckles, and I'm not giving you any money."
Okay.
And I can remember kind of being a little bit, so massively disappointed, but
Yeah.
like, oh, my mum's a liar.
Oh, okay.
She's just really, she just lied to me. Like,
Yeah.
again, I think that was already layered with certain feelings of low self-worth anyway.
Okay.
But my mum doesn't even want to give me the money. She doesn't believe me, and she's not even interested in what I've got to say, and she's not even going to take the time to sort of look at this with me, um, and has just basically lied to me about.
Yeah. And that feeling, have you got a younger experience? Not interested, doesn't want to know, disappointment.
I think no, I don't think I've got a specific, but I think I felt like that most of the time in my childhood anyway.
Okay.
So I think there were things before that that would have happened because I and I think I might have been a little bit older rather than younger. I ran away from
Okay.
home quite a lot when I was a kid. And I remember running away from home a lot and nobody noticing I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And
What age group was that?
I can't remember the first time. I think I was probably about the same sort of age because
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'd have been brave enough to run away before that.
Yeah.
But I would have been 7 or 8 years of age,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And you know, we live in this theta state up until the age of 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
Everything that we take on, everything we see, everything that is going on around us is a vibration that we're receiving. So, we're an antenna really. And so whether it's verbally or um spiritually, that we're receiving this information, these vibrations, whether it's protecting yourself from knowing that somebody's in a bad mood. This is where, to me, this is where the empath is created in that age group.
Mm-hmm.
um and out of a lot of that is self-protection and self-preservation.
Yeah.
So these wounds, then we take anything that happens, we've got no way of verbalizing or questioning, or even, why would we think that the people that we've been given to care for us wouldn't be telling us the truth or wouldn't be treating us? A lot of people then, because obviously I work with I work with a lot of people that have been in abusive relationships, but
Yeah.
they can't see the abuse
Mm-hmm.
because to them it's quite a natural thing because
Yeah.
they were treated like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying anything along this, but this is where I'm saying the wounding happens, the thought process that we internalize, and these thoughts, it might be that we've heard something, or it might be that we're associating something.
Mm-hmm.
So she's not giving me the money, so it must mean that I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't the fact that I've got 8 freckles and she hasn't got 8 quid.
Yeah.
It's because I am, and it's how can we expect, children to think like that?
Yeah.
So hopefully as we evolve, we get better at, helping the whole planet on realizing that Victorian and beyond is a really bad model of bringing children up.
Yeah. Yeah. Very bad. Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah,
Yeah.
children, everybody deserves to be seen and heard.
Yeah. Like I said, I think even before that, I'd already developed that sense that my parents didn't really care about me very much.
Okay. And when you think of that, so separate to this, if you think how does that make you feel in your body?
Again, there's a sadness to it.
Okay. And that sadness in your body, can you feel that?
A little bit it kind of goes from my neck down into my stomach.
Okay. Front or back? Down
Front,
the back,
back,
neck, down
down
the
my
back.
throat. So down my throat. And it's interesting actually, because a few years ago I realized that whenever I was unhappy with something and I wanted to say something to somebody, I'd get a sore throat
Yeah.
because I was unable to articulate the fact that I was upset.
Yeah.
And it was my
Okay.
physical reaction to being upset was to
Yeah.
shut off my voice.
Yeah. Okay. So if we take this sadness
Mm.
that you've got that runs from your neck down your down to your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Can you feel that emotion there? Can you feel, it might be just a change. It might just be that a tingling. It might be
It's like
something.
like a sinking
Oh,
type,
sorry.
kind of a tightness around my neck, and then a kind of a sinking feeling. Maybe again, maybe a tightness. I think maybe.
Yeah.
It must have.
Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to really tune into this tightness that's here and around your neck. And I want you to turn it into an object.
Yeah.
First thing that comes into your mind.
Just a box.
Yeah. Okay. That's absolutely fine. Any shape, any size, any color?
Dark blue.
A dark blue box. So we've got this dark blue box
Mm-hmm.
that is this sadness that runs from the neck down to the stomach. And would you be okay to remove that now? Because we're done with all of those emotions. We've done with all of that sadness. Would you be okay with removing that wound?
Yeah.
Okay. What I want you to do is I want you to visualize hands that can remove that box safely. No splinters. You just visualize these hands taking this box out. Just let me know when that's done.
Okay.
Okay. And now we need to destroy it. So you can either throw it away, you can burn it, you can smash it, you can bury it. It's entirely up to you.
Just stamped on it.
Fabulous. That's gone. What I want you now to do is I want you to see that child that experienced that sadness, that experienced that pain, that sore throat, that tightness that runs. I want you to see that child in front of you. It might be a few children at various different ages. Do you know roughly how old they are?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first one I'd say is about 6 or 7.
Yeah. So just see that child.
Yeah.
And if there were other ones, either younger or older, that we're not quite aware of, we're going to ask every child that was affected by that sadness.
Mm-hmm.
So just want you're going to have to crouch down, visually crouch down, and to put your arms out.
Okay.
And yeah, and you're just going to accept. For me, what happens in moments of trauma, and this is adult or child, part of us breaks away, part of our soul. Now, it might be that it stays here. It's part of our self-preservation of who we are, but it's like a fragment. And these children will represent the fragments in those moments of you not either understanding or getting a clear message or whatever it was. So what we're going to do, and this is all going to be done up here, you don't have to verbalize and communicate. Okay, this is between you and you.
Okay.
You're going to put your arms out and you're going to visualize these children in front of you, and you're going to hug them. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tell them what they needed to hear in that moment. Adult John talking to inner child, child John.
Little John.
And you're going to tell them exactly what they needed to hear in that moment. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Right. With them hugging, I want you to pull them into you. It might be one or two, it might be multiples. I want you to pull all these missing parts into you. And they're going to come into your body. So we're just going to give that one last, as if you're pulling them into you.
Just told them to go and run away and be free and be happy. I'm just bringing them back in.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's brilliant. So you've released the trauma that's around them. You're just going to bring those little soul fragments back into you so you feel whole.
Okay.
And then just let me know when that's done. You feel that's complete.
It's funny, they're telling me they want to go out and play. So
Well, that's all right. You can go out afterwards and you can take them out to play. And this is the beauty of all this work. What do they want? Ice
We just
cream?
said we can go and play and be free. Now you want us to come back again.
So yeah, you can. So when you've done that, I want you to visualize a white light at the top of your head.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to see this white light. It's going to come in through the top, through our crown in our head. And this white light is just going to filter through every single part of our body, through the brain, every cell, every nerve ending. It's calming down and it's clearing. And what it's actually doing is it's flowing through, and it's going to flow right the way through the body and out through the feet. It's removing any trauma that was left over, but it's also helping these soul fragments, these parts of us that have been missing for quite a while. It's going to be helping to help that reintegrate into your body. So it's coming through, it's going through the brain, ears, down the neck, through the spine, through every nerve ending, every cord, through the heart, through the arms, down the shoulder, down through the shoulders, down the arms, elbows, out, taking any trauma and any debris that's left over. It's flowing through and out, and then through the torso, through our gut system, and through our hips, out down the legs, through the knees, ankles, into the earth. And any trauma that's associated with whatever happened is being cleared. And then we're going to close it off. We're like a jar. We're just going to put the cap back on, and that white light then bounces off and it flows through and over the top of us. And what it's actually doing is breaking any energetic connection that was that happened at that time.
Okay.
So it's like a shower flowing over the top of you, clearing and cleansing. Okay. And just while we're here and doing this, we just want to go back to this emotion of disappointment and embarrassment, rejection, not feeling good enough, fraud that they might discover that you're not feeling, or that you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just, if you tune into that, can you feel that in your body?
No, not at the moment.
No. Okay. So that association is connected, and it's how we see it as an adult, and the verbalization that we've got and how we perceive it is taken down a different route. Okay. So yeah, I just stamp up and down and get in your body and ground, and then I go out and play.
Hey.
Yeah. So whether that's go down the pub and have a beer, take them out for their celebratory 18-year-old, whatever, if you drink, if not, ice cream. It's just playing with this and integrating with the different energies and etc. is just so powerful.
Yeah. I'm going to go and run off and be free with the kids and just
totally go out for a run, go to the gym, or that's what it's all about. That's what we live in this state for such a long time. Yeah, go and play.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Thanks. Well, thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's a bit enlightening.
Yeah,
enlightening, like the body feels a bit lighter.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting. That stamping of the box thing was very interesting.
Yeah.
Because
it could be anything. It's a representation. It's what, and having that physical object to remove, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Some people are attached to them, so it sometimes it's hard. It takes longer for them to actually say, yeah, I'm ready to let this go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like it's something, like you said, it's layered and layered and layered. Different ages, different experience. And
sometimes we never really, if it's happened before we could put words, or we had a word for that trauma, we have to just work with the emotion, the feeling. And some trauma happens well, it can happen at conception, and it can happen during the pregnancy. So there's other trauma that would not be able to be verbalized, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was reading some, obviously things that can happen in the womb when you're, when you're developing as a child, and all that trauma, maybe if your mum's experiencing some trauma, how that can get passed on to you, and all manner of things that can happen even before you're born that you can still take on board.
Yeah, and it's the stress hormones are crossing over and through the body. I used to have a neighbor, and they adopted a child, and apparently I can't remember what age they adopted him at, but he was born and he was quite an aggressive, and he was quite angry, and I think he was had a few other things going on, like autism, I think he had. But he apparently, the midwives on the report had said he came out fighting, and that was what his mother had experienced in a physically abusive relationship.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like he was ready in the world to...
already to get the person that's been upsetting his mum.
That protection.
But it's interesting that you say, like, all those stress hormones that you might experience as a parent, as a mother, I mean, they all go through the placenta and stuff, don't they? And straight into the baby. And there was some research I was reading a year or so ago about how it can restructure the wiring in the brain, because you become more susceptible to stress hormones when you're born, because you're so used to them rushing into you when you're developing, that actually it can affect your sensitivity to stress hormones when you're born.
There was a fantastic study when I was doing a lot of ancestral work, and that was done around 9/11, and it was how the various different stages that you took on trauma, and then that was passed over, and they had women that were able to, it was the first time, because lots of people experienced it around the Holocaust, but they weren't there. It was fed through the grandparents, through that event they were able to do the history and plot it, and they had women who were giving birth in New York as the towers were going down, and they had other women that they were able to interview and monitor the children afterwards, and I think it was up to about 6 months. It really didn't affect too much, but from there onwards, that's when they could see that the trauma was being passed through. So that was more trauma.
Interesting. That's fascinating, isn't it, how you can how you are affected by your environment and things that happen in your life. And
you have no idea at that point. You have absolutely, you're clueless to what's going on.
Like I said, when they said, "Oh, I'm going to talk to some other relationship coaches before we make a decision," I'm completely, as all the work I've done on the positive self and everything on it, the first thing my brain did was subconsciously reject the idea that I was of any value. And again, I think we had a brief conversation prior to the show, and I said that when I was training previously, I did a core belief exercise, and my core belief came out as, and it led to lots of different limiting beliefs, was that I'm never going to amount to anything. And that, again, that strikes, as soon as that subconscious thought says, well, they're not going to choose you, again, that's projecting out that actually, well, you're not going to amount to anything. This is a really big opportunity, but they're not going to pick you. You're never going to amount to anything. And so there's still a connection that goes on.
And the three things that when I was healing from the relationship that I'd been in, my marriage, the three things that helped me were grounding. That all happened by accident. I discovered this, it was all by accident. I was running a course on grounding, and I realized that, I'm not in rumination as long. When I was like, that was really weird. And then I started breathing. I'd been teaching it for a long time, realizing that actually that helped me with rumination. But the one thing that was like the cherry on the top was which I call honest conversations, and I teach this in my group and wherever I can impart to everybody. And it would be in that moment, okay, that moment that you're having that thought, and it's usually a thought that you've been told it, you know, whether it's true or not. And one of my examples, which I didn't work on at the time and use this technique, was I was told I was bipolar, and I was doing a lot of energy work and trying not to collapse and cry. And was still in the relationship, and I went into the kitchen one day and I was like, no, you're not going to bring me down. In my head, it was like, my feet went down into the ground to ground myself and lifted myself up. And I was told, this is why you do this. You always do this. And this is why we think you're bipolar. So I held that for 6 years. I believed that I was bipolar. And then I realized, well, actually, hang on a minute. Most of our relationship was a lie. So, but I'm still hanging on to this thought process. So the work that around that would be, you've got this thought, you've put the phone down, you've put the phone down, and it's like, okay, they're obviously not going to pick me. I'm not good enough. I'm fake, or whatever it is. For me, it was, I was bipolar. I can't remember how I discovered it. I actually can't remember, and it's like, is that true? Is that true? They're never going to call you back because there are other people. Is that true? And then you sort of flip it and go, well, if it isn't true, what is true? And if I hold this belief about myself, what examples have I got that actually smash that thought process, you know, in a positive? Well, actually, why did they phone me in the first place? I mean, where the hell you just don't go through a directory and go, you know, I'll pick him. Then somebody must have said something, though they've seen your work, you know. Then look at all the people that you've helped. So is it true that, you know, and then you sort of bashing. The honest conversations is actually going in and discovering what the wound is and how old it is, and where you're holding it in a similar way that we did, and then having conversation with it and saying what you really need. What is it that you really need in this moment? And it's usually an inner child that needs some form of comfort, or it needs words, a bit like the second part of that. You know, it needs to be told something. It's okay, look, you know, there might be 5 other people, but there aren't 5 other John Kennys. And there aren't, you know, and it might be that I don't get picked, but it won't be because it's me. It will be because either somebody fits that a bit better, or the time scheduling fits better, or
and in fact, they all went up. The show, which I believe was the show, went off in a completely different direction than the one that pitched to me anyway. And I think they just used a couple of counselors in the end, who were on the show very, very fleetingly. And so they didn't really, I don't think they actually probably needed anyone anyway.
No, but they sort of, like, I think, was it like Big Brother and people like that have them in the background, don't they? And they do their bit in the background, and they might interview every so often if something happens. But so
but thank you very much for that. It's
pleasure.
Something I'm going to think about and reflect on.
Or just leave it where it is, see what happens.
Just to hold on to this feeling, this lighter feeling that I've got. If people were interested in maybe getting their own clearing done, or would want to find out more about what you do, how do they reach out?
Oh, right. So if you go to my website, thedivorcesanctuary.com, you can go to, on my Instagram, I've got a link tree in there with lots of different services. There are a couple of things on there that I'm offering just at the moment. It started off as a Black Friday deal that I just thought, do you know what, just leave it through. So I've got a distance healing thing that's going on, which is called Quantum Glow. And I work with 18 core wounds, or it's 3 core wounds, but I work with 18 wounds, and the rest are branches of.
Okay.
And I do it as a distance healing. it's a tenner. It's a really easy, cost. And that you'll get an email with a very short MP3 of what happened, what the wounds were, and the healing that comes with that. And I'm also doing something very similar to this, but it's a 30-minute session. Again, it's a really, really silly low price. The rest of them are on my website. So I've got the original wound, honest conversations, I think is on there. So you can do it through there, but they're all on, on Insta. If you go into Instagram, so it's the Emotional Divorce Warrior is what my Instagram is.
Awesome. Lovely.
Yeah.
Again, thanks for being a guest on the show. Thank you.
No, pleasure. I love it.
In my space. So I look forward to seeing the kind of feedback that we get.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting.
Yeah. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Pleasure. Thanks, John, as always. Thank you.
Take care. So.
I hope you enjoyed that. If you're interested in working with me, getting rid of this, clearing, reparenting, whatever it is you need, reach out. I'll put all the links below in the description. As always, sending you loads and loads of love.